CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris is in Washington, and Real Clear Politics national political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns is here with me in New York. Steve, I want to start with you there on the bird and turn to some familiar rhetoric that we've now heard from Donald Trump, but he repeated it again on the eve then of the primary contest here in New York. Our Major Garrett, in fact, said that the Trump campaign needs a reset. So what exactly is writing for Donald Trump here tomorrow?
Well, he's got to win big. He's got to match these polls that show him up by 33 points. He's got to really get a 50% or above, I think, statewide, and then in a lot of the congressional districts. The way they allocate the delegates in New York is if you get 50% or above statewide, you get 14 or so delegates. And then by congressional district, if you get 50% or above, you get all the delegates in each of those districts. Now, where Cruz is going to try to pick off some delegates is really to try, or Kasich for that matter, is try to keep Trump under 50% in some of these congressional districts. So basically, he just needs to get as many delegates as he can out of the 95 that are available tomorrow. And that, I think, does reset the conversation a little bit. We've talked the last couple of weeks about delegates and how Cruz has been picking them off in places like Colorado and Wyoming. And then in terms of loyal delegates on second and third ballot voting, he's gone behind the scenes in a lot of other states and sort of placed his own sympathetic delegates in those spots, even though they might be bound to vote for Trump on the first ballot. If it goes to later ballots, they'll potentially vote for Cruz. So there's a lot of that discussion going on. I think the larger number of delegates that Trump can get tomorrow, I think you're starting to talk a bit about of a reset in terms of the delegate count.
Caitlin, then what to make of the fact that we once again in Wyoming saw the superior ground game to this point of Ted Cruz, and it inspired a familiar reaction from Donald Trump. But we're still only talking about just a few more than a dozen delegates in Wyoming. How much of a victory is that, or any other of these, working things at local and state levels when Donald Trump has these clear margins in these delegate-rich states?
Right. It's a really good point. And we're in a phase of the campaign where really every delegate counts. I mean, obviously, John Kasich doesn't have a path to the nomination, winning those necessary delegates outright. Ted Cruz has a path, but it's very difficult at this point. So really, these candidates are in this race to prevent Donald Trump from winning that necessary number of delegates, and figure that anywhere that they can pick them up is going to be somewhat of a victory. But you're right. I mean, if Donald Trump especially wins all of the delegates in New York, that sets Ted Cruz back another 95 delegates. And so we're coming into another phase of the campaign where not only New York, but in the next couple of weeks, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Maryland, other areas where Donald Trump can do well. Ted Cruz, I think, is going to be looking at places in California, which is a similar kind of primary system as New York, where it's divided by congressional district. He's already campaigning out there. But again, as Steve mentioned, if Trump is able to win today, that sets Cruz back. Tomorrow, that sets Cruz back.
And Steve, again, it did inspire that familiar reaction from Donald Trump attacking the RNC. Reince Priebus has come out and said we are going to be above board in all of our meetings. In fact, we're not going to be looking to change any rules, trying to be, I guess, as transparent as possible for what, again, our Major Garrett referred to as a once obscure meeting between RNC officials. But what to make now, again, of the Republican frontrunner once again invoking the, however veiled, threat of violence in Cleveland in July if Donald Trump is not the Republican nominee?
Well, Trump later said that he wasn't actually urging violence, but what he's suggesting is if he doesn't become the nominee after this is all said and done, then there could be problems. And he's making the argument, he's setting the argument up, basically, in case he doesn't get to 1237, in case he doesn't clinch the requisite number of delegates to get the nomination when the primaries are done on June 7th. And what he's doing is backing the RNC into a corner and basically saying, I could get to 1200 or I could get to 1150, just short of the majority, and I will have won more states than any of the other candidates, and I would have won more of the popular vote than any of the other candidates. And you're going to then tell me I can't become the nominee of this party because I didn't get the majority of the delegates. That's the argument he's making. And what he's saying is the party is setting up to work behind the scenes to prevent him from getting the nomination, even though he's the clear leader in all of those categories. That really puts the RNC in an interesting bind, and you're seeing Priebus sort of dance around this and basically saying, no, this is all above board. We're not trying to change the rules. We're going to go at this, and this is all up to the delegates at the convention. But you can see the argument. You can see the fight that's sort of gearing up if Trump doesn't actually clinch this thing in June.